making a Cucco from Zelda Link to the Past. Not going to lie, I spent way too much time attacking the Cuccos when I was a kid. I don't know why, it was just really funny to me. It still kind of is funny to me. Anyway, for this week, here's what you need to make an adorable little Cucco friend. Red, white, and orange roving wool. Felting needles. A needle felting mat. Some dish soap and a small bowl. Tacky glue. And small black beads. The first thing you're going to want to do is take off a decent chunk of white wool and roll it between your palms until it forms a ball. Once it starts holding together, you can start needle felting the surface while rolling it around on your mat so it keeps its round shape. Now you might have to add more wool as you go because the felting process will shrink the wool. It will get denser and denser, but just keep going until it's about the shape and size you want. Now it's time to make the wing. You do this by taking off a smaller chunk of wool and rolling it around between your fingers and palms until it forms a cylinder that holds together almost on its own. At that point, lay it down on your mat and start stabbing it while rolling it around. You don't want to felt it into the mat. Make sure you keep rolling it around so that it retains its cylinder-like shape. Now repeat these same steps for a second piece of wool. Roll it between your fingers, make a cylinder, and felt the top of it. Try and leave the bottom of both pieces a little unfelted. At that point, take the two cylinders, overlap the bottoms, and stab repeatedly with the needle until it fuses into one. Now, one thing I've found very helpful whenever making any part of the Cucco is to really have that first ball body shape sitting beside it at all times so you can easily check the size. So feel free at any point to stop what you're doing and check that the size ratio still matches what you want it to be. Now the wing actually has one more part and it's actually really itty bitty, so just repeat the same steps you did for the first two feathers to the third, making it really, really tiny. Now your wing should look something like this. To get the two feathers to stay together, you're going to take a little bit of wool and place them over the two top feathers, making sure that the fibers go between the two. Stab repeatedly to get them to felt together, and then once all of the stray fibers have joined in, they should stay pretty close. And at that point, you're going to want to define that line even more by running your needle over it many, many times. This will felt really thoroughly anything that's between the two feathers and give you kind of a cool, distinctive line shape that is clearly there on the sprite. Now it's time to make the head. You're pretty much going to do this the same way you made the body, it's just going to be smaller and you're going to try and make a little bit more of a cone shape instead of a sphere. So just use your needle to push the wool around, trying to have more wool gather at the bottom than at the top. If it gets too small, add more wool by wrapping it around and just continue until it's about the right size. Once the head is the right size and shape, take a little bit of extra roving wool and felt it to the bottom, kind of like it looks like it has a beard now. At that point, throw it on top of the body and felt it on using the needle going through the head and using the beard you just attached to help better adhere it to the body. Now you should have two wings and they should be opposite of each other. At that point, throw them onto the body by stabbing repeatedly through the wing into the body until it is adhered on and it's not falling off, making sure to try and keep your lines intact as best you can. Alright, time for the feet. Take a little bit of orange wool, roll it together into a cylinder, felt the cylinder with your needle tool, and then fold the cylinder in half, felt the two ends together so that they form a U shape. Repeat this for your other foot and you should have a pair of chicken feet. Alright, time for the beak. Take a little bit amount of wool, make a cone shape, use the needle to reinforce the cone shape, and just keep going until it is small and very felted together. Now honestly, I ended up having to trim it with a pair of scissors to get a small enough cone. I felt like any smaller I couldn't really work with it, so don't be scared of that. At that point, use your needle and just go ahead and felt the beak onto the front of the chicken head. Now, at this point, I noticed that my chicken really didn't have a tail. So I took a little bit of wool, I formed it into another cone shape, and I felted it onto his butt because looking closer at the sprite, it looks distinctly like he has a tail. So that's what I did. So if you remember to do it before you add the wings, that's totally fine, but as you can see, you can totally do it with the wings already attached. At that point, grab your orange feet and start felting them onto the bottom the same way you felted on everything else. Just keep going until everything is nice and adhered. Alright, time for the red parts. The first one is going to be a teardrop that's going to sit right under the beak, so just take the red, use your fingers to form a teardrop, use the needle to reinforce, and then adhere it onto the body using your needle. The final red bit is a ridge that goes over the top of its head. I actually like to take off a piece and kind of make yarn and then basically just form it into about the right shape and start felting it in using a needle. And I kind of run the yarn back and forth over the head until it is as tall as I want it to be, or I take off another piece of red and make a new chunk of yarn, because it is actually supposed to be rather tall. So just keep going, adding more yarn, felting with your needle until it is the height you want it to be. Throw some dish soap into a bowl and add some hot but not boiling water. Then throw your cuckoo in and let it soak up all of the water. Take it out of the bowl and start rubbing your fingers all over the surface, wet felting any and all stray fibers that were missed. Once it all is very, very sudsy, it's time to rinse it out by repeatedly changing out the water, squeezing it around in cold water. This will help cement any stray fibers and make sure it's really nice and felted. Just keep going until there are no more suds, and then put it out to dry, which also can take a while. Once it's dry, it should look something like this. Last step, time to add the eyes. Now take your needle tool and form kind of an eye socket in the side of the head where you want the eye to go. Once you have a pocket formed, take a needle, add a little bit of tacky glue into the socket, and then stick the bead in, making sure it goes long ways up and down. Let it dry, add the other eye, and you are all done with your cuckoo. I kind of just want to throw them at people.